Hello, my name is Lou, and I had a problem with my Colt Trooper. Um, had a problem with my Colt Trooper. Here you can see it's empty. And what was happening was, if I pointed the gun straight up, the cylinder wouldn't spin. You could spin by using the double action, or a single action, it spins. So I've since fixed it, and I thought that maybe other people might have a problem similar to mine and would benefit from this video on how I fixed it. This gun is from 1971. This gun is 53 years old. And what happened was there's a spring pin right here that flattened out. So when I put the gun like this, the actuator that came up would flop down and it wouldn't spin the cylinder. Of course, that's pretty dangerous, because if you're in a situation where you're defending yourself or your family, what would happen was the cylinder wouldn't turn and you would pull the trigger on an empty load. So that could be a disastrous life and death situation. So here's how I went about fixing it. Before I start, you can see this Cirrus map, this Cirrus mat, cirrusgear.com. Has a picture, a drawing of the gun and the parts list, which is very handy. This one's for the Colt Python. I'm working on a Colt Trooper today. So anyways, you might want to get that. Also, you could go to Colt.com, download and print out the manual for your particular gun. Mine is a Trooper MKIII. And also I got good price parts from Properts Gunsmithing. Good price, good service. Okay, so let's go on. So the first thing to do, now there are other videos that take the gun all the way apart and all the way back. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to address the problem I had. So first of all, you take the screw out for the grips. Make sure you use a good tip so you don't damage the screw. You want to be sure to have a safe spot for your parts. Losing a part can be a big disaster also. You have to call up Properts and get new parts. So here we have the gun with minus the grips. This is a great gun. So the next thing to do is to take out the cylinder. And you'll always keep checking to make sure it's empty. The way you do that is you go to the other side of the gun, and right here is what looks like a screw, but actually it's a spring cover. So you take that out. Here you could see that it's got a hollowed out area and a slot over here. So that's a spring cover. And then right here you could see a spring, a little tiny spring. Put that in the can. And then you carefully flip it over and the post comes out. The post is a stud with a rounded end and then a hollowed out area for the spring. Now the cylinder is free. You use the release, bring it out, and then you could just wiggle this guy and it comes right out. Here you could see the indentation where the post goes that holds it in place. Right there. Okay, now you have the gun minus the cylinder. You also have the registration number right there. And you have two screws. This screw here, which is hidden by the grips, and this screw here. And then there's a tab that goes into the frame that holds the cover on. So you remove the screws, the screw by the trigger. It's just a regular screw. And this screw with the big head goes by the handle. Now these guns are really well made, and the cover fits really, fits perfectly. So you have to kind of pry this up from the handle side. You want to be careful of the cylinder release. Hold on to it. Here you can see the cylinder release. And if you carefully slide it out, it's got a beveled side with a notch in it. And here you could see the flattened spring, which goes against this little post here. And there's the hole where the post from the cylinder lock goes through. And I'll show you how that works better later. Also on the other side you have your registration number right here. Is the registration number. Okay, so now you can see the gun naked, as you would say. There's two levers right here. The one that has an elbow to it, and then the straight one, which is the actuator that spins the cylinder. Behind the actuator is a spring that's attached to this elbow. Now this elbow piece is actually a hammer safety thing. As the hammer comes up, that piece of metal goes between the firing pin and the hammer. It's a safety device so that you can't hit the firing pin. There's two posts actually on the trigger itself. Those posts can be removed. The lower post, which is attached to the elbow here, the lower post goes through and connects to the trigger spring, and that gives the trigger tension when you pull it back. This spring here is for the hammer, so that the hammer spring as it hits the firing pin. So these pieces are just sitting here. They come right off. But the main thing is, and the problem I had, was this spring right here had flattened out a bit. You could see the new one here has a nice curve to it. But this piece had flattened out. So that when I fired the gun like this lever stayed down. It didn't rise up and push the cylinder. It would catch on these notches in the cylinder and push it forward, and that's how you would advance. You know, it'd come up and push here, and that's how you would advance the cylinder. So at first I just bent the spring forward, but I didn't feel confident with that, so I ordered a new one from Proppert and I put it in. So these pieces are just loosely in there. You could just take them right out. Here's the actuator. That's the new one. The old one was a little bit worn, so I got a new one, but it was really okay. And again, this elbow piece comes right out too. They'll fall out, so you want to be careful. Once you get the cover off, things are loose. Now, this is the new spring, and it slides into a notch right at the pit of the elbow. You could see it came out. So that's good. You could see the notch in the elbow. This loop slides right in there, and that's how it stays. The new one was a little bit bigger, so I had to get a needle nose and squeeze it just a touch so that it could fit into the notch. And that's the way it's supposed to be. The old one I had was flattened down. It didn't have that curvature. And that little problem could have been life and death. So you might want to check your old revolvers, point them up to the sky, pull the trigger, make sure the cylinder spins. Okay? So while we're talking about it, I'll just show you. Right here is another spring. There's a round spring right here connected to this lever, and that's the lock that holds the cylinder when you're firing. So as you pull the trigger, the lock goes down, allowing the cylinder to turn. Then it comes back up and locks onto the next round. So without the two levers in place, that's what you get. You just have the trigger with the cylinder lock there, and then the hammer. Okay, so once you get your new spring, you put it in the notch there so that it looks like this, and I found that it's a lot easier to put in the actuator for the cylinder first. So you put that on the upper post on the trigger, and do be careful because these posts come out easy. You put it on the upper post, and then behind this there's a little nub here, a round post here, so the actuator has to go behind the post. Then you take the elbow piece, connect it to the post, move it forward so that it goes between the hammer and the frame, and then you just push the spring back till it's behind the actuator. Then it looks like this, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Now you have to be careful so that they don't fall out. And at this point we put the cover on. The cover holds everything in place. But before I do that, I just want to make you aware of this. This locks the cylinder in place, you know, where it spins off of. So when you pull the cylinder release, you're pulling back on this post. That allows the cylinder to come out. So when you put the cover on, you want to make sure that's forward. And then here we're going to put the cover back together. That post goes through this hole. And it lines up with this notch here on the cylinder release there. So, first you put the spring in place, the flat spring. And it rides right up against rides right up against this post here. Then you slide this piece. It has a beveled entry here. Has a beveled entry, and you slide this in. You don't want to lose that spring. And now it's spring loaded, but you have to hold it. You have to hold it in place till it's on the gun. Now what I'm going to do is, here is the tab that goes in, here's the tab that goes into the frame. You put that in first, and you come down. And what you do is move the actuator back and forth, the cylinder release, until it catches on that post. Then you can press down on the cover. There, it went into place. The cover fits tightly, so you have to do it like you mean it. Now you can see that the cylinder release goes back and forth with the post that holds the cylinder in place. Also, we could see, you could see the advancer unit come up here. That's what advances the cylinder. That's crucial. And it works in double action or single action. Same thing. So everything's working, so I can screw down the cover. This bigger screw goes in the handle side. Again, you tighten these firmly without stripping, just firmly. You certainly don't want them loose, but if you try to do it too tight, you'll damage the screw. Or, geez, you could damage the frame threads, which would be terrible. So just do it firmly. You don't have to kill it. So these are the two screws that hold the cover in place. And again, the cover is held by the tab up here and the two screws. And now it works great. You can see the actuator coming up that spins the cylinder. Now we put the cylinder back on, and you just slide it in. Pretty easy. You want it to be flush. You want it to be flush here. See that? Nice and flush. And now the cylinder is locked into place. The actuator works. Okay, now you go to the other side. Here's the hole. And you take your little post and you go round side down, the cup side up, so that the spring will go into the cup. You have your little tiny spring that goes in the cup of the post. It sticks out a little bit, and then you have this weird screw that has a hollowed out end to it, and that goes over the spring. And this one you want to be careful that you don't strip the screw. If it doesn't go right at first, back up and try it again. So that's what holds the cylinder into place. Okay, so now the cylinder works good. It's locked into place. The gun advances, the cylinder advances, even if I resist. If I point it straight up, it still works. Now I have a reliable gun I can bet my life on. That's important. Okay. So then you just put your grips back on. There's only one screw, a big screw. The biggest screw, I guess you would say. Goes on. Now, at first you do it loosely, just get the screw in, and then what you want to do is look at the end and make sure it's lined up, that both sides are flush before you tighten down. That way you don't have that uneven feeling. These rubber grips are great. They're called MKIIIs. My friend gave me these, and they're much better than the wooden ones that slip in your hand. So with the rubber MKIIIs, you really have a great grip on the gun. I'm a lefty. So that solves that problem. I hope this video was helpful to you. And, you know, as I said, check your old weapons, your old revolvers, and make sure that the cylinder spins every time, because that can save your life.